We are 1 minute past. I think by the time we do the housekeeping slide and the introduction slide, any stragglers will have joined us. So, housekeeping, those of you that have not used Zoom webinar, there is a chat box that I've already typed into. Feel free to type questions in real time whilst they're fresh in your mind. We may answer them in real time, Dan and I, as we're having this conversation, or we might just pick it up at the end. But feel free to ask the question when it comes to your mind, and we'll address it at some point. It is being recorded. I can take people off mute too at the end for the actual Q&A session, and you can ask questions with voice. It doesn't need to be through chat. So let's get going. Thank you for joining this session today. My name is Neil Battarbee. I'm from the CAI ShopVue team. And I will be having a conversation today here with Dan Welter, the CIO of Standard Iron. The abstract that we sent out, right, the modern fabrication industry is in a consistent battle with fragmenting processes and disconnected data. It's not relevant just to the fabrication industry. I'm convinced, right, regardless of the market that you work in, much of what you'll hear today is applicable to you and your business. Dan is going to share his goals, objectives, and outcomes of this 10-year plus digital journey that he's been on at Standard Iron. We're going to start with a hidden factory, right? Which, for those of you, if it's not a common term, it's used by operations management to describe all the unplanned, unnecessary, and kind of non-value added activities that occur within an organization's processes, right? Then we'll move into efforts that Standard Iron took to connect their systems to ensure the operations team, the quality team, the finance team, HR, payroll, everyone has got valuable data to support continuous improvement activities. And then Dan will share what he's done most recently in the last 6-9 months or so with ShopVue about delivering an additional layer of kind of process execution controls, fully focused on mitigating those hidden factory losses that we'll talk about and improve the bottom line. As I said earlier, we'll end the session with Q&A, and I think Dan and I are going to hear some tips and tricks from you guys as well, because after all, the goal of these Sun-sponsored events is that we engage as a community and we learn from each other. Specifically, in this next 45 minutes or so, Dan and I are going to discuss 4 key challenges as outlined on this slide here. So, as you know, efficient manufacturing is one that maximizes output and quality, and in doing so, minimizing waste, right? That's the focus in a nutshell. Lots of processes and tools and systems need to be done well, right, to make sure the plant is humming. You've got capacity planning, you've got factory layout and kind of lean principles, you've got effective MRP. But in this case, we're here today to talk about efficient execution, right? ShopVue, as you know, maybe you don't know, but it's a manufacturing execution system, an MES. So our domain, right, that we're talking to you about today is high quality production, minimal unexpected delays, and ideally eliminating rework, but at least handling it efficiently when it's needed. So, Dan will probably touch on a bunch of KPIs, right? OEE, overall labor efficiency. If you track those metrics, they've got to be accurate, and ideally they've got to be in real time, right? So you actually have visibility into your work in progress, right? Your WIP. So there's going to be a big focus on data. There's going to be a big focus on metrics. And then there's about, Dan's the CIO. He's IT. He's managing that team. He's managing those tools. We'll talk about some of the things he's done to eliminate silos, right? Data silos, system silos, right? Leveraging APIs to connect all of his core systems, right, within the standard IAM environment. So those top two bullets, right, visibility into WIP and eliminating data silos, go a long way to the bottom two, right, driving continuous improvement and understanding where your business processes have room for optimization, right, and maybe give you a few tools to help optimize them. So I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about CAI at a really high level. We're a software company. We've got tools in several different markets, but every product has one key theme, right? We give you actionable information to increase your operational excellence at all levels of your business, right? Whether it's the shop floor or whether it's the C-suite and the top floor, they're getting the same information, maybe with different contexts, different views, different metrics, but it's the data is being used to make the best decisions for the business. Specifically, many of you are going to recognize our brands as we've been part of the Syteline kind of ecosystem for many years. You'll recognize the Radley EDI solutions, the material traceability solutions, which is our barcoding system for WIP and also warehouse. And obviously, we're here to talk about ShopVue today. Last year, and for those of you that were at the conference, we introduced Passable, which is our connected worker platform that replaces paper, not just for process execution, but for machine maintenance, for 5S, for many different workflows. So our goal is all aspects of your operations. CAI as a whole has 2,300 plus customers globally. The logos on the slide here are really a selection of our discrete manufacturing customers. We've got a side of our business that's more process manufacturing focused, and we have different products that serve those markets. We're obviously here because we're part of the Syteline space, but in fact, we are completely ERP agnostic, right? So whether it's the Microsoft ERPs, SAP, even customers running old green screen IBM client ERPs still. And the other thing of note is we're industry agnostic, right? We work well with aerospace, automotive, metal fabrication, right? Ceramics, and kind of anything in between. So that's enough about me and CAI. So let me introduce you to Dan. We have a bio of Dan here, and I'll just give you a highlight. As we said earlier, he's CIO. He is responsible for establishing and executing technology strategy, right? He's made investments. He's probably made bad decisions. He's probably made changes of his course of action. And hopefully we'll learn a little bit about that today. But he operates, as I'm sure most CIOs do, as a strategic partner to the business, operations, finance, people, right, with collaboration and the goal that we talked about earlier of every manufacturer to drive efficiency and innovation. Dan, by way of introduction, thank you for joining. Welcome. Share something about yourself that I don't know.
Sure.
I've known you for a while.
Well, yeah, thanks, Neil. I've been at Standard Iron for over 19 years in some capacity. Started as an IT consultant, and they hired me full time, and just kind of continued on. And yeah, it's been a great place to work. As far as something that folks don't know, I don't run into it too often, but I did marry the girl across the street. We started dating after high school, but we knew each other in high school.
Maybe they'll make a Hallmark movie and some Hollywood star can play your role. Dan.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So tell us a little bit about Standard Iron, right? That's about you, but tell us about you as an organization.
Yeah, so Standard Iron's been around since 1930. Really kind of started focused in the Midwest. Originally, really focused on the architectural metals type work,
Mhm.
um, but over time grew more into kind of the contract manufacturing areas. And like I said, really kind of Midwest focused for a long time. We started to expand more kind of in the 2000s. And in the last few years, a lot of exciting things have gone on. We were invested by a private equity company, and we had an acquisition last year. So continuing to grow. Like I said before, it's been a great place to work. There's folks that have been here longer than I have.
Mhm.
The people are a good piece of Standard Iron and why folks like to work here.
Good. So you're a growing company, right? And like you said,
Yeah,
since you deployed ShopVue, you've had a couple of acquisitions, and maybe we can touch on the benefits of that as we go through the rest of this session,
yeah.
or the benefits of using technology to help, right, with kind of
Hmm.
integrating acquisitions into the business. Um,
Yeah.
Great. All right. So for the next part of the session, Dan is going to talk about how Standard Iron embraced digital, right? And it's focus on ShopVue, obviously, but there's other systems, touch points, right, into ShopVue, um, with the goal of improving operations, right, that are impacted when you have fragmented processes and disconnected data. So please think about these bullets on the right hand side as kind of statement pairs of a digital challenge and then an associated operation goal, right? So gaining real-time visibility into WIP has enabled Standard Iron to uncover the hidden factory losses, right, that we talked about earlier on, and in turn improve production performance. Eliminating those data silos by connecting ERP, MES, other systems, right, test stands, data lakes, that kind of thing. Dan's going to talk about that. And having context around that data has made that data usable, and can then work hard for the organization, right? This data, the right data at the right time, is identifying KPIs that are not being met, right? That's the biggest focus. If you're running at 100% everything, which no one's going to be, then there's nothing to do. Because the operation is perfect, but that's not reality. So you're looking to fully understand the reasons behind why KPIs are not being met, and then you can turn your digital solutions, whether it's MES, whether it's other solutions, to then chip away at error proofing. Whether it's real poker yolks in an assembly process, or whether it's integrating a more effective WIP inspection plan, right, to prevent value being added to work in progress where it shouldn't be. That's really the driver, right? Eliminating that waste. And then finally, the final topic we'll be talking about again is leveraging technology to drive. Some of my customers refer to ShopVue as a core model. I don't know whether that's the right term for Dan, but it helps create that consistent business process. It drives site conformity, and it just makes sure that you're not finding the same outcome in your operations doing it 7 different ways in Dan's case, right, with 7 sites. So even if you're not doing it perfectly, you're doing it 7 ways the same way. So as you iterate and with a goal to make it perfect, then you're only working on that one process. So Dan and I are now going to dive into specific examples of each of these categories, with the goals of sharing tidbits, right? Really, to help you improve your operations in your own businesses. So Dan, talk to me a little bit about what life was like at Standard Iron before, back in 2013, before you first deployed an MES.
Yeah, so we had a a legacy data collection system that we were using that was integrated with Syteline. Um, but back then, we were still really paper driven. We had a few terminals out. Maybe our biggest sites had 6 or 7 terminals. Um, so there was a lot of walking to get to information, a lot of paper printed job travelers, blueprints for the parts that we were making, and a lot of recording on that paper as well. We would have quality kind of inspection plans printed on the job travelers that operators would fill out on the paper, ultimately turn in at the end of the job, and it gets filed away and never really looked at, or it's really hard to even use it for any kind of reporting analysis type work.
Yeah. Okay. And it's human nature, right? Everyone wants, every employee and most employees in almost every company want to do a good job. They want to meet plan. They want to hit goals. Um, and the trouble is with KPIs, sometimes they lack definition. And if they're not accurate, then at best it's demoralizing the team. Um, at, at, at best, they're just ignored, right? Um, so what kind of reports, outputs, kind of what were the KPIs are you looking at? It's like, was labor efficiency a big one?
Yeah, labor efficiency is definitely a big one. And when we rolled out ShopVue, one of the things that we did was we really got it into all the different work points throughout our factories. So, we went from 7 terminals to 40 some odd terminals in some of our biggest sites, really trying to get the information to the employees so they're not spending time walking around. That helps them also, have better transactions. They can record them more timely. It's less about remembering what you have to record when you walk to the terminal.
Yeah.
So labor efficiency was a big one. The other one, you talked earlier about mistakes and KPIs and stuff. One of the ones that we really wanted to kind of get to but struggled with was like the overall OEE,
Mhm.
um, because it was a big piece to maintain kind of the staffing piece of it. More recently, we've been focused really on like the labor utilization piece of it.
Okay.
So from ShopVue, we're able to kind of track time and attendance hours and run hours to see, not only are we being efficient, but are we using our paid time for those run transactions where we're making parts. So
Okay.
that's kind of been a newer KPI piece that we've been looking at.
And what do you do when you find KPIs that are maybe lacking to standards? Is it taking an opportunity to check that the standard's right, or does it drive work efforts around process engineering and that kind of thing?
Yeah, our engineering team will use this information a lot, and they can use it to kind of drive time studies, A3s, different types of projects to really kind of hone in on, is it a standard issue? Are there other things going on um, that are, causing the difference in standards, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I know you're going to share a quote from your engineering manager later on, but I won't spoil that. But you said you have a lot of long tenure employees. Is there talk about change management? Was there any struggle to like, okay, now we actually want you to be using technology, using an MES at the point of execution versus, standing in that line before you go on break and logging your data? Or did people take
Sure.
it well?
No, overall it went well. We were kind of concerned initially just because, changing anything is hard sometimes. Um, But one of the things that we did through this implementation was we did some pretty in-depth conference room pilots, and we had some pretty good training that we went through with all of our different operators. So prior to going live, we made sure and went through and did training with all the operators, pull them into small groups, and kind of go through it. You know, there were concerns when they kind of go through that piece of it, but they got enough so that when we did go live and they got into it, they knew what they needed to do, and it wasn't, within the week, I would say even like they could see the benefits of it. We were really able to provide the operator more information right at where they need it rather than having sheets of paper or having to walk and go find info.
Okay. So no one wants to go back to where you were pre 2013. No one's saying I want more paper.
Nope. Nope.
Okay. Let's talk about the hidden factory losses a little bit, and maybe if you could just talk to a couple of examples of losses that you were able to identify because you had better quality data in real time. What was most impactful to stand it up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the quality was a big piece, just like what I was mentioning, where it's all getting recorded on paper, really hard to quantify, report, analyze. Um, so just getting that stored electronically, that was kind of a big piece. We had built kind of our own um, inspection, we call it a control plan, but inspection plan piece that would show print on the job traveler out of Syteline. And through the implementation of ShopVue, we were actually able to take that information and download it right into ShopVue. So now in ShopVue, they actually had a screen that they would go through. All the test information was there. They would record tests, get reds and greens if it was good or not good. So they're also getting instant feedback right there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also getting stored. So now we've got reports that our quality team can look at, and notifications and stuff driven off that information to kind of better prompt us and be able to analyze that info.
So let me validate what I think you just said. So you were site language, a system of kind of master data for inspection plans, control
Hmm.
plans. They were downloaded into ShopVue through an API. Data was collected in ShopVue, but you reported on it and you managed it within ShopVue. You didn't send the individual records back to Syteline, correct?
No, no, we were never storing the information before, and it all was kind of in shop. That functionality was in ShopVue. We didn't really see the need to send that information back to Sightline. So yeah, all of that reporting is just done directly out of ShopVue.
Okay. Okay. Maybe talk a little bit about inventory then. What are the benefits of kind of visibility into WIP with respect to inventory?
Yeah. Again, a lot of it is kind of the timeliness of the transaction. We were pretty good on it with having the terminals. It's not like we were way back in the Stone Ages where everybody was writing stuff down and it would get manually entered on the weekend. But we definitely did see improvements just by, again, getting those terminals closer to where folks were. Um, Again, they're not having to write things down and go to the terminal and transpose it or remember what they had done. Um, and so that was a big piece. It also kind of increased all the tagging that we were able to do out on the shop floor. So we were able to kind of identify parts more easily. So then as you're walking through the floor, everything is labeled, whether it's kind of maybe it's an in process, but it's got a first part tag on it, or it's,
Okay.
between operations, but it's up on the shelf and then it's got a move tag.
So you lost less inventory. Not that it was permanently lost, but maybe
Right.
it was a challenge to find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, and you mentioned, lean, continuous improvement, your process engineering team, A3 it's all about like more, right? It's a never ending journey, right?
Hmm.
You're going to get KPIs that are not met and areas that are identified. I can't even ask you what's next because you probably don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think ultimately we want to get closer to that OEE piece that we were talking about before. Really, um, the machine utilization. It's good to know if the operators that we have are utilized correctly. But if we've got a machine that's only running with one operator during the day and we've got room there, to really have a better understanding of that, I think will help us, as we grow. So
Sure, you want to make sure that you're maximizing your capacity, right, that
yeah.
you have with the equipment. Um, okay. Um, so one of your goals, right, key objectives as a business systems group that you manage is to eliminate silos, right? We talked about that at the beginning and integrate your point solutions, right?
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of examples, and we're not going to go through all of these, but I'm just wondering if there's, a handful that you would just share with the audience here and those that have maybe added most benefit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I like to say in our environment or our universe, Sightline really is the sun. It's in the middle. That's where, to your point from before, like that's where the master data is all entered and it kind of flows out from there. So Sightline and ShopVue are talking, and we've got a little unique to us, but we actually have ShopVue instances at each of our sites. One of the things going paperless was that we wanted to um, have that system on site. So if there was internet issues between the site and our headquarters, or we had power issues, we didn't want them to not have their data collection software if we were down somewhere else, right?
Or need to
Um,
keep shipping parts?
so having that, having Sightline and ShopVue talking on their own is huge, so they can kind of stay in sync, and that all kind of happens behind the scenes with SQL. Um, and really kind of minimal human kind of intervention there. But yeah, so some of these other things, our HR team definitely, when we first implemented ShopVue, we were able to kind of take advantage of their interface with ADP. We went from really just kind of data entry payroll process to be able to export the information out of ShopVue, upload it to ADP, and then kind of tweak things as needed from there.
Mhm.
Some of the newer things that we're doing, we're starting to get with work with the ShopVue API to integrate it with some of our testing equipment.
Okay.
So we'll be able to like push a button in ShopVue that'll start testing equipment out on the shop floor.
Okay. And this is like testing equipment that's gathering a lot of data, and you pulling actual specific process data or results in, or are you just pulling in like pass fail type data into your control plans?
So it's what it's going to do is it's like a leak test, pressure test system. So
Yeah.
it's going to pull the information stored in Sightline gets fed down to ShopVue. That's going to push the test information to the device itself and start it. The operator will kind of be responsible for identifying issues and recording them in the work instruction kind of control plan piece.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get to the work instructions
Yeah.
uh, in a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Um, so let me transition in. We'll just talk about data a little bit, right? So I think it's worth reviewing how a lot of our customers view their 4.0 kind of strategy as a journey that's data centric, right? So the first stage here, the bottom left, is all about having visibility into the current status, right? And putting that foundation in place, right? You got to that in 2013, right? You had some low hanging fruit, you were getting some quick wins. Um, Optimizing your labor performance, you really clarified that as a first focus, but at the same time starting to collect data that can be used to support Gemba walks on the floor, and really have that data start to inform information, right, and discussions. The next stage is to turn that information into knowledge, right? So you understand why you've got an adverse activity and why is it happening. So it can be simply like human informed reason codes for downtime, reason codes for scrap or rework or tolerances not being met, but it can also be from starting to gather a lot of process data depending on your operations, right? And you start to and you mentioned a data lake, Dan, earlier,
Mhm.
right? And you can start to use your data lake in BI to really focus in on improving yield and the quality and the process improvement. But where a lot of people are looking to get to right now is starting to get ahead of the game at stage 3 up here, and being able to predict what's going to happen before it actually does, right? Make sure the planning team is comfortable with their business model for the day, for the month, hitting the sales target, etc., or delivering on everything that's been sold, for example. Here, I think that process data that you started to collect, um, you can use that to better understand and prepare for things like tooling changes, right? In a standard machine shop, if you get spindle speed or vibration, then hey, that's an example of being able to, predict that, hey, we've got to change a tool. That's in its simplest form. In some industries, I've got some automotive customers that are doing like molding press work, where they've got temperature pressure curves and they're tracking that information against a control plan, and being ready to make changes to the machine or shut it down and deal with issues before you actually start making scrap. The far right, stage 4, I don't know. It's almost like the nirvana. It's kind of self-optimizing systems. Some manufacturing will get there. I would say more recipe, more, process manufacturing, but certainly less on the discrete side. Um, Dan, if I asked you where Standard Iron was in 13 and where you think you're heading now, where would you position yourself on this?
Oh yeah, in 2013 we were definitely more in kind of that stage one. We had some recording, but it wasn't really where we wanted to be. And between that quality data and going paperless was also one of the things that we were really interested in. So I think stage one we were there, or 2013 we were in stage one. Now I see us kind of in that into maybe close, working towards that three. We ultimately want to get to be proactive,
Yeah.
being able to predict some of the things that cause us downtime, all those kinds of things. You know, that's where we aspire to be.
Yeah, and one of the cool, and I know you couldn't join our customer advisory board that we had earlier this spring, but one of the things that we presented to that group was a predictive OEE model, right? So based on history, right, based on the machine learning model, but based on, you know, the product mix, the machine mix, the employee on schedule, and a bunch of other inputs, you'd be able to have all right, the start of this shift, we predict your OEE is going to be 65%, something like that. And it was good. It was validated with a customer that had 6 years worth of data. It's not in production yet, but it's something that our analytics team will be working on in the coming months for sure. So AI and machine learning, the important thing for me to get across here is you can't even in operations, you can't leverage big data analytics and AI if you've got data that's coming from paper and key punched. You need it there in real time to be of value. um Dan, I think you've been leveraging ShopVue, and Clint, I know you've asked a question, and this maybe Dan will talk about this now. Actually, right? You started with ShopVue in 2013, but you're still doing work in MES now, right? It's not taken you 12 years to deploy MES, but tell us what drove you for this latest journey, this latest project that you've been working on, and maybe answer Clint's question, which was, he's going through an ERP switch soon, and how long did it take to implement the MES within your environment?
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I'll hit that first. So when we first started in 2013, we had signed on at the end of 2012 that we were going to move forward with ShopVue. So we started, in earnest in January. We went on site to the ShopVue office for a kind of a conference room pilot in April, and at the end of July, I think it was July 29, 2013, we implemented our first kind of stage of ShopVue at one of our sites. Two of our sites, two of our bigger sites, we actually kind of did it in two phases just because they were so big, and that worked okay. So we did like kind of the front part of the process first, and then 2 weeks later we did the rest of the facility. And so the first one was that July, so it was 6-7 months to get to that point. And then over the next few months, we implemented at the other facilities as well. The first one, ShopVue was a huge help with all of it, but they leaned in more on the early ones. by the time we got to the last implementation, I pretty much ran that one on my own. So it was, the way we kind of set it up and did it, it was very kind of structured, doing the same thing at each spot. But yeah, as far as new stuff, I meant, I don't remember if I mentioned, but as we're growing, one of the things we did last year was an acquisition, and so one of the things that we're working on is implementing ShopVue in this environment again to kind of standardize our systems across all of our locations. And they've got a kind of a really unique process, and ShopVue has a tool called digital instructions that I really wanted to implement at our other sites, but we haven't really had the opportunity to do it. But it's such a good fit here that we are starting to kind of spin that up. So this is an example of those work instructions that I mentioned. It really is kind of like sub operations. If you think of like a job structure in Syteline, it gives you the ability to really kind of provide more detail right at the operator fingertips, and they can kind of go in and check things off. There's pictures and other kinds of things that you can provide for them. I think, even videos and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, so that's what we're kind of working on, kind of implementing right now. We've been working on it a little bit, and we'll be implementing within the next month or two. Um, but like it all really was kind of based in Excel, and it originally at the site, and it fits really well into this digital instructions module.
Okay. So Clint, I think to answer your question, you can get value from deploying an MES really quickly, address some of your big drivers, right? See your return on investment, right? Get that payback. But I think the answer is you're never done deploying the right MES. You're always going to find opportunities to fix problems that are identified, right? Use the tools to apply it to a particular process that either what weren't present when you first deployed it or was not an issue that was identified. So see it as a journey, right? A continuous journey that will never end. But 8 to 12 weeks out of the box, you get value from it in that first phase.
Yeah, and I would say, at the time we were 4 sites, so it just took us enough. We were complex enough where it took us, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But if it's, depending on what you're coming from, you're a smaller site, I could definitely see getting it implemented sooner.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about digital instructions a little bit more. And Dan talked about in his kind of initial version, he had control plans that were coming down out of Syteline. What digital instructions is added to our customers is the ability to, if they haven't got a fully fledged PLM systems, which a lot of mid-market manufacturers don't, that it gives those manufacturing engineers, process engineers, quality engineers a tool where they can create, maintain, and revision control sub-operation standard operating procedures, right? We've broken it down. We have templates. We have, snippets of SOPs that can be used in many different locations. We have appropriate validations, right, to support business rules, allowing overrides, right? A supervisor stamp to override something that maybe wasn't met, but it's okay to continue. All of that's been done. We developed this in partnership with several of our aerospace customers, so it's all kind of meeting their kind of compliant industry, regulated industry means. So graphically, what it looks like is you've got your ERP. In this case, we're talking Syteline, right? That is downloading the order step, the quantity needed, the due date, right? All of the order related components into ShopVue. And then you're getting your relevant sub operation presented to the operator. And it's almost like being spoon fed to them. It's not done in a way that needs to force those extra steps. But if you're doing, machine setups, changeovers, if you're doing first article inspections, or you got some complex assembly workflows, it definitely makes sense. And rather than going to a paper pack, rather than going to logging onto a SharePoint folder and searching for what you're needing, ShopVue will spoon feed, will present the actual content, the actual media to those operators. Dan, I don't know what I know you took a slightly different path than our core here, but that was just to take advantage of some Syteline workflows that you already have. Your,
Yeah.
your ME team, I know we got a quote from John coming up, but your manufacturing engineering team is embracing it.
Yeah, it's still in development right now, but with the idea of kind of keeping Sightline the center of our universe,
Mhm.
we want to kind of build, using IDOs and whatnot, build the authoring of this inside of Sightline, just because the engineering team, for a lot of it, we're dealing with the routings and stuff inside of Sightline, right?
Mhm.
I would like it to kind of get built there and then pushed down to ShopVue, so everything's kind of happening within sight lines, similar to what up until now our inspection plans have done.
Yeah.
That's really, it's almost like inspection plans on steroids.
Sure, sure. No, that's a good way of looking at it. I know you talked to John, and I can read this quote, and you can expand on it. But so John Yender is your engineering manager. He said, you mean ShopVue is my go-to
Yep.
for data to use for cost justification, process analysis, year-over-year analysis, and gives me and my team a glimpse into what happens out on the shop floor. Um, he's owning that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it really gets down to the data that we're able to collect and then have for analysis, whether it's just hours, whether it's on parts, work centers, machines, or some of that quality information. you know just getting this pool of data and being able to take action off of it, that is something that we continue to kind of benefit from. But even like one of the things John talks about here is you know cost justification for machines and whatnot. One of the things that we were able to do with ShopVue on how they kind of structure things and Sightline, um, the routing goes down to the work center level. We might have a work center for press breaks that really is 10 press breaks.
Sure.
Um, Within ShopVue, we can create those individual press breaks. They all kind of roll up to the same work center, but now we're able to like identify that we're recording hours on these different press breaks, not just under the work center. So it gives us that another level detail without complicating the costs that kind of go at the work center level.
Okay, so you're able to track like the press availability, right? Unplanned downtime or whatever becomes visible to the engineering team, and press number 4 is not performing as well as the rest. It kind of informs a capex review budgeting process for either a maintenance or a repair.
Yeah, or just even like if we're recording significantly more hours at a specific press break, why is that? Like, what are there things that we could do spread out the programs to better kind of utilize all of them.
Okay, yeah, so it's good quality data and being able to make informed decisions, right, with that data. Okay. Um, one final slide before we get to the Q&A, and I think Dan, just talk to us a little bit about business processes, right? You've made a couple of acquisitions since you had ShopVue as part of your technical solution within Standard IM. Did it make it simpler to onboard a new acquisition? Was the process streamlined?
Yeah, so the first one really was more just kind of organic growth, not an acquisition. But we in 2017 opened up a facility in the southeast, and I was able to essentially kind of pick up and back up and restore once we had the appropriate licensing, a new ShopVue environment at our facility. And so being able to kind of take the existing processes that we already had defined and already kind of working and
Mhm.
drop that in our new location, that was a huge help to be able to do that. More recently, with that acquisition from last year, we're right now working through the process of implementing. So we've been kind of getting the 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 software ready because it's the acquisition. Some of they do have some unique processes, so it's taking a little bit longer than just kind of the pick up and drop in.
Yeah.
But we're getting really close, and again, that digital instructions piece is going to be a huge um, provide a lot of value there. Similarly, all, all of that stuff before was getting recorded in Excel files, so not paper but Excel, and then but it's really hard to kind of work with all these different Excel files. Now it's going to be in a database. We're going to be able to see where we have issues with the instructions, and benefit from that.
Okay. And then it's take what you're learning from we're deploying in that acquisition side, and then adding to the core model, and then rolling it out
Yep.
in the other 6 sites, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we do plan to take the digital instructions piece to all sites. Absolutely.
Okay. So what do you mean by standardization kind of always increases efficiency? Is it like is it just like normalizing like scrap factors and tracking overage on material and that kind of thing across the portfolio of sites, right? Having commonality or
Yeah. It's really about doing as much as you can, doing things the same way across the organization.
yeah,
Especially in times where it's tough to hire folks. We've shuffled folks even between facilities. So to have someone go from one site to another site and have them be able to use the same software, follow the same processes, that's a big deal to not have to teach them, a whole
train and
different process,
onboard
right?
and sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate we're right on time actually, and we're kind of transitioning to any additional questions. If you want to put your hand up, I'm happy to take you off mute if anyone would like to talk, or feel free to throw a question in the text chat. It can be questions for me, or probably more likely questions for Dan. Clint, if you've got a follow-on question, you weren't shy. All right, Clint, I've taken you off mute, I think.
Yeah. How's that?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Perfect. Hi. Thank you both very much for this presentation. It comes at a pertinent time for myself and my managers, the company, as we are going through a ERP switch, and we've known for many years that we're missing. It wasn't built for us, and the MES was a potential solution, which one of our companies overseas had to implement to align with their ERP Syteline system.
Okay.
Um, for me, it's all more about um, the change management part within your company, knowing that you've got some senior guys, some youth. Um, d- is there anything that you can elaborate a little bit more on the change management, the buy-in, and where to basically start for a lesson learned, I guess. That's where.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more you can do upfront, the earlier you would get folks kind of in so they can see it, the better. Um, that's one of the things that we're working through at the kind of our newer acquisition site is, kind of feeding them updates and kind of getting visuals to them so they can understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Um, but then when it really gets down to it, being thorough with like your conference room pilot, testing out all those scenarios, pulling in operators and supervisors for some of those types of things. When we did the training, we definitely, made sure that the supervisors had pretty good understanding of what was going on with ShopVue. But then we also like tried to have, you know, some key individuals trained up as well, so that if operators have questions, they could, you know, go to them and not necessarily have to come all the way back to ShopVue or IT to kind of get answers to a questions. Um, Being on site for it too was helpful. I personally was on site, and so was our trainer that we had for each of the go lives. Um, you know, that's a little bit more of a cost and takes time to get everywhere depending on how many sites you have. And you know, it's a little bit easier now to do it in this virtual world than we were in 2013. Um, but being on site, you know, being able to run around the shop floor and people grab you for questions, you know, that was a big thing too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we have we've got three, four, five. We have five facilities in Canada that we would need to some form of MES for four in the US um, before we go overseas. So yeah, the Americas and Canada is basically going to be a function for us. So you're talking 9 sites that will need this form of MES. So interesting, yeah. Let's get my passport ready.
Do get your passport ready. We've got a couple of our consultants that live in Ontario, actually. They're in the Windsor, Ontario area. I'm not sure where your Canadian sites are. Are they this coast or are they BC side?
They're all over in every province, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can. We don't need to share more now, but yeah, we certainly have a lot of customers that have a very effective model for multi-site rollout. I have a customer that has just started a 22-site journey. They just kicked it off last week, and the team is heading to France next week to workshop and you know, continue the gap analysis process and start configuration work. So it's the process, and you know, we learn from our customers. We continuously improve our process, and events like this is, you know, where people like Dan can kind of share his lessons learned. So yeah, Clint, I look forward to maybe you know, chatting with you a little bit later on. Anyone else want to raise a hand to be unable to talk, or any more questions in the type chat?
Yeah, Clint did have a question just about the file repository.
Yep.
On the digital instructions. We do have like a distributed file system where all the files sit, and we use DocTrack for some of that inside of Syteline. Ultimately, part of that integration between Syteline and ShopVue, that information does feed down to ShopVue as well. So ShopVue knows where to find those files.
Live data for machine downtime. Sure. We have our, let me share a slide here that I had at the ready to support questions. But our module number 4 is our direct machine interface, Clint. We leverage a commodity OPC UA software, right? It's open protocol, it's PLC drivers, right? You get drivers for AB, Siemens, you know, FANUC. Once your machines are networked, connected and talking to your network, then we have a middleware layer that can tie in those tags. In its simplest form, you're collecting 3 pieces of data. You're collecting running or not running, right? And that we have business logic that can report downtime, and automatically like calculate your OEE, right? The availability leg of your OEE. You've also got cycle time reporting to standard, right? So Syteline's the master for cycle time standards per piece. We're using the PLC if it's not human reported, right, from an assembly bench, and we're getting that cycle time and the performance side of it. Quality side typically doesn't come automatic, usually quality, unless it's like a modern machine with built-in cameras and that kind of thing, comes from a human input. But they're your three legs. The third piece, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, is that process data. We have workflows within ShopVue. We have an advanced maintenance module that can tie in with a CMMS, right? So a lot of organizations are running a maintenance management solution. So we can monitor the machine, we can fire an and on, send a request, open a work order in a CMMS through an API, and you start tracking the downtime and reactive maintenance, right, on that particular asset. Dan was talking about his, 10 presses in a work center, in a single work center in Syteline, and that's not an uncommon approach. So having that extra level of finite data in ShopVue can be really useful. So yes, we have an IoT strategy, and yes, we can work with you with a time series database as well if you want to track process data within control limits. You have a follow-on question, Clint?
Yeah, sorry, there's either 5 Clints or it's all my team because I shared this meeting presentation with them all. So that's why I'm pretty vocal. It's not, there's 4 of my team members on this, from supply chain to my plant manager, who's probably just asked that question about OIT, and then my analysis guy. Yeah, make it sound I don't know what I'm doing, but it sounds like they know what they're doing, so that's good. So love that.
Okay, all right. So there is another question from another Clint, the same Clint, the Clint team. What are these the already known discovered gaps between MES and Syteline integration? So we have been working with Syteline for many years, and they have different versions of we have some customers that are on CSI, right, on Cloud Suite, and we've migrated to a modern, the Iron Bridge API tech stack. Dan is not. Dan is a little bit further back in his Syteline journey. Dan, you want to answer the question around the integration between ShopVue and Syteline?
Sure. Yeah, in general, it does work pretty well. Like there's very little that we do have to kind of put a hand on or whatever to kind of help it out. We will occasionally have issues. One of the things that ShopVue provides is a really smooth interface for folks to fix transactions if it's needed. And sometimes the timing of that can get kind of wonky if like a job is closed in ShopVue or in Syteline. So we do have a kind of a process around watching for that, and it's pretty rare, but occasionally something just kind of gets hung up because something is out of sync, and usually it's not a big deal to fix it, but it doesn't. I mean, it maybe happens like once or twice a year, I think. For the most part, we've got it kind of built where like if a job is closed and we fix the transaction, we've got a process that will bubble it up to the production team, and they're able to open the job and get it to go through.
Okay. I don't know if we get automatically cut off after an hour. I don't think we do, but I think that's Amy. No, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, I just saw you in time. You can, and then the other Clint's got another question. Amy, go ahead with yours. Let me allow you to talk. Go ahead, Amy.
I'm just curious if you're using these features with project-based work or not.
Not really. We are so our architectural metals division is a little bit more project-based. We are creating jobs in Syteline for that, and it's feeding into ShopVue. So we are kind of recording time on that. We are kind of evaluating how we might want to do that different, but we're not using the project interface in Syteline.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, I can answer that question, and there's history somewhere on our website. There's a company called ABEC.
That's me.
It is you, because I recognize your name. Okay. Would you like to talk about the project side? We can have a conversation.
I'm working on an ERP project right now in regards to how to strengthen our ERP system. And since we already have this, I'm trying to make sure I understand all of its capabilities. So definitely will be something I want to hit on with Brian, who's our ERP guy here as well.
We've got a time card tool that's, I can't remember off the top of my head whether ABEC is using it for the engineers, right? For the non-direct labor, right? To put time against projects.
Yeah, we're using time and attendance.
Yeah, but there's a specific element of it that's called time card that actually downloads projects from the ERP and allows engineers to work against actual billables. So I think you are using it.
Yeah. You're right. We are.
Okay. Clint, we don't know which Clint, one of the Clints. You're allowed to talk.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. This is Cruz. I would like to go back just briefly about the file repository and the revision control thing, the question I put before. I am interested to know better how the revision control actually works in this kind of integration with CSI. We have been interested in digital work instructions for a while, and we haven't been able to incorporate that into Syteline for several reasons. Revision control is one of the main things. It's always a problem how you manage revisions. It forces us to separate the control somewhere else and then go back to the platform just to upload files. And it's always a problem. We want to be alive. What we want ideally is have those work instructions and eventually drawings in a live fashion where you can always rely on what you are seeing, not dependent on someone to upload the file just and remember to do that. We want to be live with work instructions and drawings. Is this possible with this MES and Syteline integration?
I'm going to answer 100% yes, and we'll let Dan get into the details. But we are, like I said, we're ERP agnostic. So I'm going to answer from a holistic perspective. So in our DI authoring, this is where your MEs, process engineers, quality engineers are maintaining the standard operating procedures, the inspection tasks, right? The control plans, the how-tos on the assembly, and they're linking those sub-operation steps. Remember, Dan had these sub-operation steps. These can be 100% maintained and revision controlled in ShopVue. We've got email-based kind of approval process, right? You can set up the structure. So when a revision is made, it gets approved. And then you can determine whether you want to release it in Impact WIP or just release it for future orders. All of those controls are in place. Tying it in with the documentation, I'll let Dan talk to that. But essentially, you need to have a document management strategy that aligns, because what we're tying in against this subtask is a URL, right? So as long as that URL, that link is your latest revision drawing, then ShopVue is always going to present the right document, the right drawing. I'll pause and I'll let Dan answer specifically around the Syteline environment in his case.
Yeah, I guess I would probably so we're working on, how we could kind of establish this in Syteline using custom IDOs and stuff. But if you look at just how it works within ShopVue, the authoring tool is, it's a intranet page basically, but has the ability to freeze and unfreeze the different sub operations and whatnot. So you can, and each time you kind of go through that, it records it as a different revision. So you have that kind of separation where the current revision that's frozen will get pushed to the floor. And as you're working on a different revision, you have that ability in the authoring tool. Is that kind of where you're going for, Klaus?
I think you might have muted yourself again. I think you can unmute.
Sorry. I was saying that I hear you. I still struggle to visualize how this is going to be well maintained, because engineers and document controllers do change the documents in a separate platform. How that platform talks to MES and Syteline is not clear. My own experience with DocTrack, it's not the nicest, because it's always a pain in the neck just to visualize documentation. It's always a pain. So I don't know if the reliability of the work instructions and drawings is equivalent to the reliability of DocTrack, because DocTrack is not really the nicest tool, in my experience. Okay.
Yeah, and we use DocTrack, I would say minimally. Like we do a little bit with virtual rules mostly. But yeah, it definitely comes down to like how, you kind of have to have a process around how you do this. Naming conventions on files. Our goal is to do as much through essentially kind of the idea of virtual rules or specific naming conventions, so that you're able to grab the files that you need, and it's less about like making sure that this file with a slightly different name is associated with the right plan. But it is very important, and it's a big maintenance piece for sure, because you need it to be right.
Yeah, you need it to be controls, and we can talk to you about best practice, Klaus, and Clint, thank you, and I'll reach out to you and we can engage in a conversation. But yeah, we've got a lot of customers now embracing the digital instructions authoring. I've got some tier 1 aerospace customers that use a PLM in some of their sites, but they're not mature enough in many of the others. So they're using ShopVue's DI authoring in that regulated industry. So there's a lot of good best practice conversations that we can have with you. Great questions. I think Clint, I will reach out to you, and thank you everyone for attending, but most importantly, Dan, thank you so much for joining us and participating today. And I love it when we get some cool questions, and interaction is great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll send out some emails. You can get access to the recording and share it with other team members as well, if you choose to. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.